This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Watch, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Brian Darcy James about a little movie called The Cathedral. How are you, Brian?
Hi, Abe. I'm well, thank you.
It's great to be talking about this movie. I saw it at Sundance almost a year ago now, and then all of a sudden, the end of the year comes along, and these organizations like the Gotham Awards and the Spirit Awards are celebrating this little movie. Is that something that you expected?
Quite frankly, no. It's thrilling. It's thrilling to be a part of something that gets any kind of attention, let alone with the awards circuit and the recognition of this film, particularly amongst independent filmmakers and the like, is I think is a great just a great embracing of all kinds of filmmaking and all kinds of budgets and yeah, I'm very proud to be associated with it.
It's also nice because you're used to getting, a lot of theater related awards nominations, but to have a Spirit Award nomination is a nice step, I think, for those of us who spend more time in the film and TV world to get a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks. It is a really nice recognition to have, the work that I'm doing in film be a little light shining on it. That's it's quite thrilling and I couldn't be more excited about it.
I remember reading about this film in the Sundance program and being like, that sounds interesting, a little unusual. What was your first reaction when you heard about the film?
Yeah, I read the script and I had the same reaction. It was very unique and the structure of it was very different and but very engaging. And that coupled with watching Ricky's first feature, which he has a style and a an approach all to his own. And the combination of those two things made it very alluring. And also, additionally, it was in the middle of the pandemic. So, I was in the middle of trying to figure out what I wanted to do creatively and how to best use my instincts and my desires in terms of living a creative life. And all those big questions we were all kind of dealing with from life questions to health questions to career questions. So along the career path, I was really excited about the idea of doing something that seemed unexpected and challenging in the sense that I didn't quite it wasn't a natural language for me in terms of Ricky's approach and watching his first feature and seeing, oh, this is going to be unique and different and artistic and it was all of those things and I loved it and I think Ricky's a very singular talent and I'm really glad that he's getting the recognition that he is.
And I assume your bonding didn't come from having D apostrophes in your name, because from what I understand, he pronounces the D apostrophe, right?
Oh, you know what? I've always said Dambrose, so I could be saying it wrong. We've never had that small D club conversation.
Was the experience of shooting the film what you expected from having seen his previous work?
Well, yes, in the sense that I've done enough films now to understand just how depending on the kind of money that's involved, just the it's a lot of work and it's a lot of logistics and it's a lot of just being ready to go, especially when you don't have a lot of money on the table in terms of what the production can afford. It's everybody in the same mindset, just doing a big job and working together communally in a way that is, I think, really rewarding and quite frankly is kind of what I'm used to working in the theater a lot. There is that sensibility of everyone kind of pulling together at all times. There's a more cohesive attitude, let's put it that way. As the budgets soar, I think there are more compartmentalized versions of people getting their jobs done, and I'm not knocking that. It's just a different feeling. So the shooting of it was in that sense was the same. I guess what made it unique was again getting back to Ricky's approach and the way he sees things, trying to find a common language of what it is that we were both trying to achieve in a scene, through the character, him as the director and the writer, and me as the person trying to kind of enact this character and bring it to life. And that was very quickly established. And he's very Ricky is very collaborative and open-minded, and I think was just as curious about what it is that the actors wanted to bring to it as we were about his approach.
And on the note of being communal and collaborative, you also worked with four different actors who are playing your son. I'm sure that was an interesting experience.
It was, yes. There, you did have to, you did have to kind of stay on your toes in terms of what the timeline was, but that was obviously very helpful to see exactly which version of Jesse, my son, the character Jesse, would walk in, and so you learn pretty quickly where you were in the story.
There are also certain events that we might all remember, or some people might remember from real life, that are thrown into the storyline. Did any of those evoke any particular memories for you?
Well, I grew up in the 80s, so the story is set in the 80s. So just culturally speaking, the way that the Ricky has framed the story is that you get a sense of a very particular American cultural background that is constantly informing this story of a family that is working within that framework. So the AIDS crisis, the AIDS epidemic certainly was something that was, I felt and was experienced firsthand in a few different ways before moving to New York even. But all of the little things that Ricky was able to do to kind of exemplify and call back that time, there would be even the tiniest of things, like, I don't know, a Sears catalog or J.C. Penney catalog, things that I would say, oh, I know what that is, but some of the younger actors would say, now what is this? And I said, oh yeah, when you were a kid, you'd look through a catalog and you'd say to your parents, if you celebrated Christmas, you'd say, this is what I want. And that's something that I experienced. So tiny little slivers of things like that, I thought, which is kind of what the heart of this movie is. It's a collection of those kinds of fragments that add up to a whole. So I'm a little off track on your question, but
That's okay.
the little things to the big things, definitely. There are lots of signposts there that I could relate to.
One of the things I was also reminded of, I think there was the clip at the Gotham Awards that was shown, is just the anger that Richard possesses and really just doesn't quite know what to do with other than to sort of unleash it on people. How do you work with that kind of anger and present it in a way that isn't so off-putting, or at least allows you to still connect with the character?
Well, a lot of it has to do with what's written on the page in terms of how the character is constructed and the way that Ricky had developed that character. That was a bit of a boiling point for him. And all of the things, all of the dynamics are kind of inborn by that point in terms of the relationships that he has, particularly with his father-in-law, the kind of competitive nature and the measuring up that he's, for better or for worse, in this case for the worse, because he's not measuring up the way he would like, and he's taking out that frustration on a group of people that he doesn't feel is respecting him. So in terms of doing that, a lot of the work is already kind of there in the plumbing. So if you're conscious of that and you're working on establishing and building it and understanding where what musical notes to play, as if you will, that is fairly self-evident. But in terms of the actual doing it, we did it a few times, and that's when a director is able to kind of say, this is maybe too much or it's not enough. And there was never really any kind of reining in of that kind of emotional, or that kind of that anger that was displayed by Richard, the character Richard. So, but ultimately that's the director's choice to calibrate it the way he or she would like to see it.
Do you think ultimately he's a redeemable character?
I hope so. I do. And I think that comes from what I hope is established throughout the film, is that his deep love for his family is something that everyone can hopefully relate to, and see that is present and a through line for him. It's not to say that he's not challenged by his own shortcomings in terms of how he expresses his love for his family, or his just how he gets sidetracked by his own how he views himself in the world. I think we all can relate to that as well, to one degree or another. But I do, and I hope that he is a redeemable character, because he's not just out there just kind of blazing through the fields for the sake of his own kind of glory, or his own sake of non-explanation for his anger, his frustration. I think that's kind of beautifully written throughout, that he's just constantly challenged by his own shortcomings and the way he wants to be seen in the world.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Absolutely. And I saw this film at Sundance at home last year because it wasn't happening in person. Have you had a chance to, tour with the film at all at any of these festivals and be in person with audiences who saw it?
I have not,
Oh
unfortunately.
man.
That would be something to be able to experience it in the theater with people, hopefully as time goes on, we get to do that more and more. But no, unfortunately, I have not had that experience with this film. But it is remarkable that the fact that we're talking about it and it's part of the discussion is really exciting, because just it might, some of your viewers might want to go out and see it now, because it's a beautiful film, and there are different ways to see films now that you didn't necessarily have before. So but yes, I would love to have that experience of seeing it in the community of a theater, but alas, I have not had that experience.
Well, I think you also have a lot of Broadway fans who will probably seek you out. And I know that I'm doing a disservice as someone who doesn't see a lot of theater, that I'm probably not asking you so many questions about your career that I should be, because I've seen you in Smash, I've seen you in Spotlight and other things. And so we're talking about the film and the TV, but I think that I have to imagine that this is considerably different from most of the theater work that you do.
Well, just by virtue of being a film, the medium that you're in is the defining term there. So, but ultimately it's the same thing. My job is to show up and to be on time and to know my lines. Being very, very simplistic here, but on top of that, obviously the kind of construction of a character and what you want to achieve, that's all the same. They're just different ways of going about it. So yes, it's different, but no, it's not necessarily, because ultimately my job is to breathe life into a character, and I do that on stage just as much as I do when I'm creating a character for a TV show or for a film.
Well, when you talked before about the size of the budget, I did see you in a film that was slightly larger scale than this last year, which is A West Side Story. And I'm curious what the experience of getting to play Officer Crupke was like.
It was fantastic. It was really, really extraordinary. Steven Spielberg, the number one reason. And just the way that being able to be in the room to watch him work and to be a participant, in his vision, that was really exciting, and I'll never forget it. But the thing about Steven Spielberg is that he has this very, as I think all great people, artists or leaders or, great fill in the blank, great people, they have the ability to take away the mystique and the myth of their own persona immediately. So you're not kind of paralyzed with awe, which, of course you are. If you have any care or interest in the film world, you would be with Steven Spielberg. But then, you're working with Steven, and, he has a job to do and you have a job to do, and you're just kind of getting to work. And so I think that was really a wonderful thing to kind of experience firsthand. And then, the bulk of my time with that film was doing dance at the gym. So, I mean, there are other scenes, of course, but I do remember, being in that gym for a series of days. And again, watching the camera work, we rehearsed, I think, a full day of just camera moves before we shot it. And then, of course, all these incredible dancers that you're just watching do this basically this huge number again and again and again. And they're just perfect and exquisite. That was really exciting. And then, of course, you've got this incredible score that you're hearing, and you're seeing it come to life in this new way. And you have to wait 8 months to see how it's going to come out on film. I mean, that was really an extraordinary, front row seat, and being on the ground floor of something and just thinking, wow, this is going to be a completely new take on something that people love so dearly. And yeah, it was quite a rush to be able to see it in the final result.
Well, despite my earlier comments, I think West Side Story may actually be one of the few productions that I've seen more on stage than on screen. And I think it does add something differently. Really, just even the camera angles, changes so much. But it's a very classic musical and story in a lot of ways.
Indeed.
So, well, what else are you working on right now? Where else can audiences find you?
Well, I have a few more shows of Into the Woods, which is a Broadway musical I'm doing by Stephen Sondheim and James Lapine. I finished that on Sunday. I have a couple of things coming out. I have an Apple series called Dear Edward, which comes out on February 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. I'm in an HBO Max series called Love and Death, starring Elizabeth Olsen, which comes out in the spring sometime. I'm in a really great movie called She Came to Me by Rebecca Miller, starring Anne Hathaway and Peter Dinklage and Marissa Tomei. And myself is in that mix, and that's be coming out sometime soon. So there are things that are on the conveyor belt, if you will, that haven't been seen yet, which I'm excited to be in.
That sounds great. Well, I look forward to hopefully speaking with you about some of those projects in the future. Thank you so much, Brian, for taking some time to speak with me today.
That's my pleasure, Abe. Thank you.